talk about just like basic eyeshadow stuff. I know I tend to do like looks and things like that, and usually with like 4, 5, or 6 shades. But just talking with friends, a lot of people have talked about just wanting to know like what colors to choose, where they go, what brushes to use, what are the parts of the eye. And so I thought maybe I could help. So I do already have my makeup on, and I do have an eye look on. I was just honestly just playing around with makeup as I was listening to an audiobook, but I will take this eyeshadow off so that I can show you some of what I'm talking about rather than just telling you. So the first thing I want to say is that you don't have to do anything like complicated. You can use 1 eyeshadow, 2 eyeshadows, 3 eyeshadows, and then you can use even more. But you can get some really nice looks just using 1 or 2. What I would say is probably the easiest is to go with a quad. So go with an eyeshadow palette that has 4 shades. You can also go with like single shadows if you like. That's even easier because you just pick a color you like and you throw it on your eye. But a brand that I appreciate for their quads is Charlotte Tilbury. We'll get to Natasha. Charlotte Tilbury. What is cool is that on the back of her palette, she usually has a little diagram, and it indicates where she's suggesting that you put the eyeshadow. And so when you open her palettes, just like on the back, the corresponding shades and numbers tell you where to put things. So that makes things a lot easier. Oftentimes also when you have a quad, the shades tend to be a bit more curated, meaning that a lot of the shades, or usually all of the shades, will go well with one another. So if you want to use 1 shade, you can, but also if you want to like jazz it up a little bit and use 2, 3, or even 4 shades, typically if you've got a 4-pan eyeshadow palette, all of the colors are going to go pretty well together. Another brand I would say that has some really good little quads is Viseart, and this is one of their Petit Four quads. Open that. So as you can see, you've got another 4 shades, and like I said before, because it's like this small 4-pan, typically all the shades are gonna go together. One way that I sort of look at it is like similar to clothes. So looking at the clothes that you have and how you wear them, what you put together, that's kind of the same thing for eyeshadow. So you probably know what shades in your closet go well with others and which ones you probably wouldn't put on, and you can kind of follow that with your eyeshadow. Yeah. So another thing that was something I learned early on, like I would always hear people say like your basic neutral palette, and I'm like, what does that mean? But neutrals are just like clothes. Again, you know, like you can have a pair of black shoes that'll go with everything. Gray often goes with everything. Brown goes with most things. Like a dark blue goes with most things. Those are your neutrals. So your neutrals are kind of like those basic everyday colors that you will often see most people wearing before you kind of hop over into the super like rainbow colors. So there are warm tone neutrals and there are cool tone neutrals. I would say that on my eye right now, I have more of a cooler tone neutral look going on. So the reason that I say that is because this has more of a grayish silver look to it. And your cool tones are going to have that blue or gray undertone, while your warm tone neutrals are going to have more of your reds and orange kind of undertones. Think fall. So like fall, you've got the foliage, you've got the orange and the browns and the deep reds, you know what I mean? Those are like your warm colors. While for cooler, you can probably think more like if you live somewhere that actually has seasons, when you look outside and the sky, it's like gray and you know what I mean? You know what I mean. Those are the cooler ones. So let's say you're like, I got you. I can do 4 shades. That is great. But let's say you're like, I don't got you. I need fewer shades. One thing that is really helpful is if you have a bronzer, that can be your one and done eyeshadow shade. So this is a bronzer that I have from Revolution, Makeup Revolution. It's called the Splendor Ultra Matte Bronzer. And matte meaning that it's just like flat, like paint. Like usually paint is matte, isn't it? I think. Yeah. So your matte basically are shadows that are not shimmery. So they're just like your regular matte shadows. They dry sort of like flat. They're powder. Yeah. So this bronzer is one of my favorites. As you can see, I have got a lot of pan in there. And a nice, easy, quick trick is to go ahead and use your bronzer as a one and done eyeshadow look. So let me go ahead and show you what I mean by that. Okay, so I've taken off that eyeshadow that I had on, and I'm gonna go ahead and show you what I meant when I was talking about like the one and done. For me, I do like to use eyeshadow primer. I find that it helps my eyeshadow to stay on a bit longer as well, especially with like allergy season, which in like the DMV, like mid-Atlantic area is like spring and fall and everything in between. My eyes water, and it's helpful for me to have a primer that can kind of help that eyeshadow stay on longer, especially when I have watery eyes going on. You don't have to use a primer. Not everyone does. Some people will use concealer as an eyeshadow primer. I typically prefer to use something that is an eyeshadow primer. So the one I'm going to use today, I'll go ahead and use this Pat McGrath wand. This one goes on clear. There are primers that do have a bit more color to them, so they usually have like an opaque color. One of them that I have is the Sigma eyeshadow primer stick. And you can see that this has a color. So especially on my skin tone, or folks who are kind of around my skin tone, a little lighter, a little deeper, it's gonna show up on our eyelids like this. So that's something to be mindful of, because it has color to it. And that can definitely change what the color on your eye looks like. But one like this, like the Pat McGrath wand, is clear. And so when you put it on your eye, it's just gonna be clear, and you don't have to worry about the color changing because of your primer. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this on. Some other primers, a really popular one is the Urban Decay primer. And another one is NYX. They have some pretty good eyeshadow primers. All you want to do is just like slap that on. Make sure it's blended out. You can do that with your finger or a brush, and then you can go in with your eyeshadow. So like I said, you can totally use your bronzer. I've got my bronzer on my face, and I can use it on my eyes for a quick look. So some of the best tools you have will be your fingers. Super easy, make sure they're clean. You can always rub into a product, and then you can just put it on your eye. Now, of course, if you have nails on, like I do, it can be a little bit harder to do with your finger, but you can make it work. So I've got that on. Let's see if I can zoom you in a little bit. So you can see that this has added some color to my lids. Now, some of us have darker lids, and so if you're using a bronzer, like it might not show up too much, especially if your lids are darker. But if they're not, then you can just throw this on, pop on a lip, and go about your business, right? Okay, so I did say that your finger is your fingers are some of the best tools, but also you can use brushes. I have a ton of brushes, too many brushes, but let me show you some of the basic ones that are probably going to be helpful. So I typically like to always have kind of like a flat shader brush. So I'm going to pull out a couple to show you. So this one here from Rephr is actually one of my favorite brushes. So as you can see, it is pretty flat when you look at it as opposed to fluffy, like this would be fluffy. Now the reason that I like a flat kind of definer brush is that I can sweep this brush across the shadow and I can pat it onto my lid. I especially like that because having a deeper skin tone, sometimes shades don't show up like just throwing them on the lid. I have to build them up. So let's say I wanted to build up this bronzer shade. I could take this little packer kind of brush, go into the bronzer shade, you can see it's on there, and I can just apply it onto my lid. The nice thing too, especially with nails, is that I can get into the inside of my lid. Now you can pat your eyeshadow on, or you can swipe your eyeshadow on. Part of it is going to depend on the formula of the eyeshadow as well as how much pigment you want on there. So you can see that I've built it up a little bit. Now let's say I want it to look more kind of like airbrushed and like blended out. Then I'm going to pick up a fluffier brush. Now, I have a couple. Let's see. So I tend to like brushes like this that have a bit of a taper, just a little bit. But this is obviously fluffier than this one, right? So I've got this like packing dense brush, and then I've got a fluffier one. So a fluffier brush is going to give you more of like a diffused look rather than a kind of packed on look. So let's say you take this brush, you tap into your bronzer. You can see that it's on there. If you like, you can tap off a little bit to get any excess so that it doesn't drop onto your face. You can take that brush and you can just use these sort of sweeping windshield wiper motions. You can do that all over your eye. Now, if you're using a like this kind of brush, you want to make sure it's soft because the skin on your eyelid is soft and you really don't want to be running something like super scratchy across your eyelid. So there is that. Another thing you can do is these circular motions. So you want to play around and see like what seems to fit best for you. I tend to just do all kinds of stuff. So I'll do this, but then I'll just do this. I just want to get the color on my eye. There's that. So two things that are going to be really good maybe for you are to have a brush like this, which is that packing brush that I talked about, and then a fluffier brush to sort of blend things out. The other thing that I like to have is sort of like a pencil brush, something like this, or even something like this. So this has this sort of tiny dome kind of, and this comes together like a pencil. What I like to do with these types of brushes is take a color. I'm just gonna keep using this bronzer. I'm gonna tap in there, and I can use this to line the lower lash line. Don't have to do this. You don't want to poke yourself, so it's not a necessity. And there you go. So that is using bronzer. Now let's use some of the quads that I talked about. So this is, like I said before, one of the Petit Four from Viseart. This is Chocolat. So let's say you're like, I want to use a bit more color. So we're gonna go ahead and use this. Typically what I do, you wanna watch other people to see what they do, is that I will have a lighter shade mostly on the lid, and then I will have a darker shade in my crease as well as my outer V. Now, you probably hear those words and you're like, what does that mean? So your outer V is literally just like the outer V of your lid. So let's just imagine that this here is a V shape. That's the outer V. Now for your crease, some people have a crease, some people don't really have a crease, some people's eyes are hooded and so the eyelid kind of disappears under that fold of skin. That doesn't matter because you can create your own crease. Typically what I do is I go right where my eyeball is, so like right here. If you're grossed out by eyes, then this might not be fun. And that is where I can sort of outline where I want a deeper color. So let's go ahead in with the shades so I can show you. So this is going to be your 2 shades. We already did 1, right? So the lightest, I'm going to use a matte color first. The lightest matte shade is this one here. So I'm going in with my packing brush, getting the color on my brush, and then I'm going to place it on my lid. So I'm wiping it across. And I tend to bring it up just a little bit, just kind of past that fold right here. I'm gonna bring it a little bit over that. So this could also be a one and done thing for you. You can grab your fluffy brush if you wanted to, tap into that, and then just kind of blend it out a bit more. And there's your look. But we've graduated to 2 colors, right? So then I'm going to go in with a darker shade, and this is the darkest shade in the quad. I'm going to tap my fluffy brush into that. And remember we talked about that V? I'm going to use this fluffy brush on the V of my eye. So that's kind of just right here in the outside corner. What I'm doing is just doing these quick little kind of like brushing on motions. You can add as you like. It really depends on how dark you want that outer corner. The easiest thing I find is to start with a little bit and then build it up. Now for me, I've got that on the outer edge. I like to bring it up just a little bit to add a little bit more definition to my eye. So we went from just right here on that outer edge, and now following my eyeball, and I usually stop kind of like right here in the middle. I just want to give a bit more definition to my eye. You want to play around with this because since everyone's eyes are shaped a little differently and all that jazz, you just want to see what kind of looks good to you. So there we have a look that now has 2 shades. Now, the best thing to do is to always blend because you want your colors to sort of seamlessly flow into one another. You don't necessarily just want like a block of color and then another block of color. So I will take the same brush after I've wiped it off and I'll just blend everything together. Once you do that, if you find that, you know, it has gotten darker or lighter in areas, you can always touch up. So let's say I want to bring a bit more lightness back to my eye. I'm gonna go in with that packer brush into that light shade, and I'm just gonna put it right back here. And then I'm gonna take this brush and I'm going to blend, doing those windshield wiper motions. All right, now let's go to 3 shades. So now that you've got this cute, like, lighter and darker thing going on, let's say you want a shimmer. I love a good shimmer. So we've got 2 shimmers in here. And that's nice because you can basically decide, you know, do you want a lighter one? You want a deeper one? I think I want to go with the lighter one. So again, you can use your finger, just rub into it, and then exactly where we have the lighter shade, just tap the eyeshadow on. So you can see that shimmer is starting to show up. And again, I tend to start with a little and then I'll build it up because that's like easier to control it rather than starting with a lot and then having to figure out how to like take some of that down. Now, let's say you're like, I want even more. I want to use all 4 shades. Then you can use that other shimmer and put it kind of where you want to. Some people will take a shimmer and they'll put it right under their brow bone, which is right under your eyebrow. Typically, you want to use a lighter shade there to bring some lightness to the eye. Because imagine if you put like a black right here, it's just gonna look super dark. Typically, people wanna look a little bit more awake. So I'm taking that first shimmer, tapping a bit off. Tapping off also helps to just put a little bit on at a time. And I'm going to run that right here. You can add more if you want. You can leave it like that. And I mentioned maybe using that other shimmer. So what I'm gonna do, taking my finger, I'm gonna go into that shimmer and I'm gonna put that on top. What I'm doing is putting it more towards the middle because I want to create a little bit of a gradient. So we've got the lighter shimmer here and it's kind of flowing into that deeper or, you know, like rosy tone shimmer, which is all flowing into that deeper or outer V. So again, finger or brush works fine. And touch up where you need and want to. Again, fluffy brush, blending everything together. So there we've got the one shade, the second shade. Usually I will also use mascara, if I remember, and an eyeliner pencil. So mainly you want to make sure that you have a brown liner, a black liner, and maybe like a peachy tone or white. White seems kind of stark to me, so like a peachy tone liner if you like. If you put that peachy tone on kind of like that lower inside, lower lash line, that can help you to look a bit more awake. Like, so if your coffee is not doing it, get you that peach eyeliner and put it right there. But I tend to like a black liner or a brown. Those are lip liners, those are not. Okay. So a brown liner is just a little bit less harsh, but a black liner is great for if you want to do like a smoky eye. So you're probably wondering like, WTF, what's a smoky eye? Basically, it's just your sexy eye, right? So you can take either a darker shadow and keep building it up, or you can always add a little bit of the eyeshadow, or I'm sorry, the eye pencil, across your lash line and just tap it in to start to make it look a little bit more sultry. So what I'm also going to do is take that little kind of pencil-y brush there, and I'm going to start to blend it out. Once you lay that black or brown down, you can then go back in with your deep shade and just kind of go over it. So I tend to keep the deeper shade sort of from the middle to the edge. I don't want to come in too far because then it's going to just make my eyes look much smaller, and I already don't have like super huge doe eyes. But this is also a great way to take a look from like day to date night. And then you always want to have your mascara on hand. One thing I have started to like to do with mascara, especially if I'm not throwing on false lashes, is I like to stick most of the mascara on the outer corner and build it up there. I'm going to put it all over, but because I want a little bit of drama, I'm going to build it up on the edge to give me a bit of that like winged out look. So basically all you do is build it up on this kind of like outer half of your lashes. I'm going to take that black liner I was using and do this here. And I need to touch this up because kind of my concealer came off, so give me a second. So I'm zooming in just so you can see the looks. This is the one with just the bronzer. I didn't put any mascara on. And this is the other eye that we did the different colors on, and then we smoked it out a little bit and put the mascara on. So either of these will work, just kind of depends on what kind of look you're doing. And this same thing can be done with a myriad of eyeshadow shades. So let's say instead of these neutrally browns, you want to go for something a bit pinkier, right? So again, you have, especially in, like I said, your quads, you'll have your 4 shades, and you can do the exact same thing that we did a moment ago with this one. You can even decide that you want a bit more boom pow on this one, and you can take a different color shimmer. So let's say we want to take this one and then tap it right on top. So now I'm taking the look from like that sort of brownish gold to a neutral pink. Super easy, right? So basically, this is what I do. So obviously you can do something totally different. You can do something that somebody else does. But I tend to keep my darker colors on the outer corner because I like sort of that like, you know, that kind of look. And I keep my lighter colors sort of from the inner corner to kind of like the midpoint of the eye because I like for that brighter look in here. But you can honestly do whatever you want to with whatever tools you have, but this is sort of how I do it. And you can see that I used 2 brushes. So for me, it's always important to have, or I use 3 brushes, sort of like a packer brush and a fluffy brush and sort of like a liner or a pencil brush. So those are the things that I find I can pretty much do everything with them. So it doesn't make sense that I have so many brushes, but I do. I think that's about it. Hopefully this was helpful for some of you. I know some of you are over here doing like cut creases and stuff like that, and we not there yet, okay? Simple, easy. You only need a few colors, a few brushes, and then you got your look. Let me know what you think. Let me know how you do your kind of like simple, everyday sort of look. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you next time.